Good day, my name is Aaron and I'll be doing a video presentation about globalization in terms of its definition, characteristics, its effect on language use and communication, all in terms of intercultural communication. To start, the term globalization describes the increased mobility of goods, services, labor, technology, and capital throughout the world. Globalization is multifaceted, meaning not only does it affect the global economy, it also affects communication, culture, and technology in the realm of spatial connections. In this video presentation, we will be discussing what characterizes globalization and what its advantages are. Firstly, globalization initiates growth and interconnectivity of various sectors across nations. The interdependence of nations, free trade environments, and cross-border connectedness or integration are some of its key characteristics. This means that each nation, with the help of other nations, has the ability to individually prosper, either to trade or what have you. Various nations dispersed across continents are expanding because of this globalization. It facilitates global business expansion, cross-cultural diversification, lower tariffs, and taxes on international business operations. On the culture side of things, one of the biggest criticisms of globalization is the fear that such a process might erode national cultures and individual identities. One of the major failures of intercultural communication is the rise of ethnocentrism. An example of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany shows that Hitler's ethnocentrist ideology rendered him interculturally incapable of accepting the worst of those who he deemed inferior. The people who he deemed inferior in this case are the Jews. Uh, this type of hatred or this type of ethnocentrist idea towards somebody eventually led to the Holocaust, which I think some of you already know what happened. The concept of denationalization has been discussed frequently in the literature, but in general, if done correctly, this can be avoided. The topic of intercultural communication will be further discussed later in the presentation. Finally, it creates job opportunities, enhanced goods and services, as well as economic development. Although this can sometimes backfire as some migrant workers can be exploited by the labor market through allowing higher skilled migrants more rights than lower skilled migrants in terms of where they can migrate. The next topic to be discussed is the advantages of globalization. One of the few advantages of globalization is that it can open up new ways for domestic businesses to transform into multinational companies. This means that domestic firms gain exposure to new international markets and hire talented and cheaper human resources. An example of this can be seen in my personal experience. I used to work for a local graphic design firm that would take international clients. So the domestic firms in this case would be the international clients, and our graphic design talent would be the talented and cheap human resources that they're looking for. It can also result in the cultural integration of two nations, along with their language, art, music, food, values, etc. For developing countries, globalization brings in multiple opportunities for employment and monetary gains. Like I said previously, uh, it can also improve living standards. Finally, globalization can lead to infrastructural growth, better products and services that initiate economic growth and greater per capita income. This is due to higher investments in developing countries. As for how it affects language use and communication, it can affect it in various ways. As we've established before, globalization can change nations in terms of their culture and so far as to integrate with other nations. Others even criticize that it will lead to denationalization. Globalization has affected language use and communication by making English the language of the globe and helping usher in the rise of the internet. A quote from Fairclough portrays the importance of language in terms of globalization. The processes of globalization inherently have a language dimension because globalization is a process involving dialectical relations between diverse social elements, always including discourse. This is to say that many outputs of globalization, like global news outlets, utilize discourse in order to have interrelations with other nations. Its effects also include the spread of English as a main language. Block claims that what Gideon refers to as the intensification of worldwide relations was made possible by the medium of English language. So the spread of English with globalization cannot be understated. This intersection cannot be outlined without the analysis of contrasting views. In Bloch's report, his review critiques that globalization causes Americanization, homogenization, and a dystopic future. To elaborate, many researchers point out that globalization is simply a ploy of the American West to deploy imperialistic tactics among the global South and the East. Critics also say that globalization creates a homogeneous world, to the point that we will eat the same thing from the same store from the same company. Ritzler defines this as McDonaldization. To further discuss, this can be derived in the sense of intercultural communication. In order to avoid homogenization or any of the negative effects of globalization, one must be interculturally competent. How can this be done? Intercultural communication is the capability of communicating with another culture that is not one's own. Intercultural competency can be achieved by recognizing differences in communication, eliminating biases and prejudices, and having the genuine intent to learn about one another's culture. Many people from Baguio had cultural differences from me as a person born in Manila. I learned to become interculturally competent by engaging with the culture, and I add that with respect and learning as much as I can about them and their culture. I became a student in the University of the Cordilleras when I was in senior high, and so I lived here in Baguio for uh, less than 2 years, but it was enough for me to be assimilated into the culture. All right, so to conclude, we defined what globalization is, what its advantages and characteristics are, and how it affects language use and communication. We also framed globalization and how it affects intercultural communication. So that's about it. Thank you for watching and learning from this video.